Hey everybody, welcome to Module 2. I hope that you found Module 1 interesting. There was a lot of basic stuff, a lot of things to get you started and kind of gear you up for it. Module 2 then starts to really get into the meat of the class, including our first main paper. So let's take a look at number 2 here. Module 2, overview of summarizing what they say. So earlier in Module 1, it was like they said and I feel, right? So now what we're doing is being able to take someone else's words, thoughts, and ideas to digest them and retell them to somebody else. Now, that's kind of important because in a lot of your other classes, you're going to have to start synthesizing the like new information from other sources, but you have to be able to show that you understood those sources to begin with. So this summarization is really a key element. Okay, this is something that you'll be doing in a lot of your other classes. And that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this first part of it. So the overview here gives you your learning materials, your assignments of what you're going to be doing, and your objectives. So let's take a look at what we got going on. And first off, we're going to take a look at the summary and response. Okay. So the first one, you said, I read this and here's what I got, right? So now we're going to combine that with the summary. Here's the thing I read. Here's what this said. Here's what they were talking about. Here's what the main points were, and then here's how I feel about it. Now, when we think about a summary, here's some things to kind of keep in mind. First off, a summary is not a blow by blow retelling of something, right? Like if I said, what'd you do this weekend? And you're like, oh, well, I did this, this, and this. You don't give me a minute by minute description of what's going on, right? First I did this, then I did this, and then I did this, then it's 7:30, and then this, and then there's this. Now it's 7:40, and I do these things. No, you hit those highlights. And if I want to say, like, did you have a good time this weekend? Then your highlights would be those things that were really good. If I said, oh, wow, man, you had a pretty bad weekend, what happened? And you'd hit those low lights, right? Now, you might touch on a highlight, okay? Or if you're giving the highlights of the weekend, you might touch on a low light. Like, here's all these things. Ah, there was this thing, but we got over it and we went right back, right? And so the summary really finds what you feel is the main theme or the main point to drag from that text. And then you retell it to your audience. I really like to think about summary in like, if you said, I went to this movie over the weekend, and I said, oh, yeah, what was it about? And you retold it, that's a summary, right? Now, again, I'm not telling everything. I'm not giving every single detail, right? And I'm probably leaving something to the imagination, but I do want to give the audience enough so that they would get it. So our first main paper is the summary and response. So there's a lot of information here about what we're going to be doing in our paper. Now, the way this is set up, you're going to do a half draft this week and then a full draft next week. So this week you'll do a half draft, you'll submit it, you'll get some feedback from me, and then you'll be able to take that information and expand upon it and finish out the paper for next week. So the first half is somewhere between 350 450 words. You may use either MLA or APA style in this, okay? That does mean you do have to cite the source that you are using. Okay, and I know that sometimes people are like, well, I'm summarizing this one article and I mentioned it in the introduction, right? Yeah, but we probably still need to cite it anyway, right? Because it gives the audience a way to go find that again if they wanted to. We start off with an introduction, and the introduction obviously gets the reader's attention, right? It really grabs them. It also includes the title, okay? It includes the title, the author, and some of the information that we really would need to know about this to really understand where it's coming from, right? Because again, you're going to summarize it and then give your reaction. So we have to have that starting point, right? Like if I didn't know it was a news story, would I understand your summary or your reaction quite as well? And then you're going to end up with this thesis statement. Now, I really like to remind people thesis statement is a one sentence statement of purpose. This is like the big thing that you're trying to do. This is the thing that you want to accomplish, right? And in this case, this really is going to at least hint at the I say or your reaction. Okay. This is where you're going to kind of give us the direction that we're going. So we want to be clear about whether you liked it or you disagreed with it or you found it disturbing or interesting or whatever. You have to at least hint at that, because as we see your description, we have that context in our mind. So we know where you're coming from. And then when you give your reaction, we're already kind of prepped for it, right? And we understand. It would be really jarring if we just assumed that you were really positive about this because of the way you wrote it, but then all of a sudden you got to the reaction and it was really super negative, right? That would be really hard for us to square. So in the thesis, you do want to introduce that. You then have a summary of the closed theme reading, closed research theme reading, right? So you're going to pick one of those articles, right? And you're going to retell it. You're going to give that summary to us, okay? Now, at this point, you can just refer to the author or the title because you, in the introduction, have already set that up, okay? This is a lot of they say, right? This is what they said. They talked about this. They talked about this. And remember, a summary is not a critique of, it is not an evaluation of, it's just a retelling, right? Like, again, you can go to whatever buffet restaurant and you can say they had this and this and this and this. That's not the place where you say, oh my God, this thing was so amazing. And this thing was, probably not so much, right? That's not the place for the summary. The summary is where you retell what's going on. You're then going to end up with a response. And this is the I say, right? Like if they say that, this is what I say. And that's my reaction. That's my gut level reaction to this. Your reaction isn't what your reaction is isn't that important. You don't have to like it or dislike it or hate it or love it or agree or disagree. That's not the point. The point is that you are very clear about your position and why you got to that. Now, in this, what you really have to be able to do is point to some of the places where you got that. For instance, I was really confused by this article. For instance, in paragraph 5, right? And then you describe how that generated that feeling in you, right? So again, what your position is isn't as nearly important as your ability to explain it, justify it, and prove it. Okay. Again, if you think about if somebody says, "Oh, I really love that movie," why? Because I love that movie. Well, what was so good about the movie? Well, because I loved it. Right? You want to be able to explain how you got to that point. Your conclusion wraps everything up. Again, that kind of hits those main points and highlights all the things that you want the audience to take away from your reading. I always like to remind people this is the last place you get to say stuff to them, so you want to make sure that it counts. Now, in this module, you'll do the half draft, okay? This will be, again, that 350 to 400 words. You'll get feedback from me, and you can take that and use that as you go forward. This paper should be in style, and it should be like written, okay? Like, don't just randomly, like, here's a paragraph, and maybe a few sentences, and I'm going to flesh it out. No, it should be done, right? Like that, it should read like an essay. The final draft then will be doing module 3. Okay, so you'll take what you get here, your readings, your feedback, any other interactions you have with it, and then you'll finish it for module 3. Now, something I do like to impress upon people is that there is no reason you just don't write the whole thing, right? Like, there's no reason. I know that it's a half draft. I know the expectation is only a half, and I'm not going to count anybody. I'm not going to count anything against anybody if it is only half draft. That's not a problem. But the more paper you give me, the more feedback you're going to get back, right? And so that's going to be a really important piece for you so that like, oh, hey, this is what he said about this is what he said about this, and this is what these people said about this, and these are the things that I have to work with. Plus, it'll be easier next week to finish that paper, right? So if the more you can generate here, 3/4, the full paper, whatever it might be, again, understanding that it is a draft, it's not the final product, it's not done. But the more you give me, the more I can give you back and some feedback, okay? Again, the expectation is only a half. But anytime that you can do more and set yourself up, the better off you're going to be. Um, let's take a look at one of our next assignment, which is going to be the closed research theme reading check-in. Each module, we're going to have a place for you just to kind of drop into the readings, pick one, two, and give your take on it, right? Like, this is what I read this, and this is what I took, and this is what I feel, or that was shocking, that was amazing, or why did I pick that? There's different questions along the way. Um, so the purpose of that is to give you the chance to sample a lot of different readings. Okay, as you go through, I think you're going to start to see that. I know the overall theme is like food in society, right? But within that, there's so many different other places. There's dieting, and then there's economic issues, and then food security, and then there's like environmental issues, and there's all these different layers, right? And as you go through and you read these, it will help you kind of like, what do I want to focus on? Because in your last main paper, you're going to focus on something and argue it. Okay, and so this gives you a chance to sample a lot of different things. You're not going out and finding other articles, you're not finding new things, right? You're picking what's here, sampling it, and then giving us your take on that. Okay. Um, and then we have our first discussion board, or our first big discussion board. And this is the one where I really, again, like to impress upon people how the discussion board works. Okay. There's two parts. Midweek, you're going to turn in your initial post. That's where you answer the question. That's where you state your opinion. That's where you share your ideas and beliefs and your take. Okay. You want to do that early so that people have a variety of posts that they can reply to. By the end of the week, okay, by the end of the week, then you're going to go on and you're going to reply to others, right? And you're going to give that take from them. Now, the replies that you have should be more than just, yeah, I agree. Okay, maybe, but. No, they should be explanations like, hey, I see what you read. I really agree with this because. Hey, I saw that and I'm not exactly sure where you got to that. Here's what I took from it, right? And maybe it's a critique of like the work, maybe it's a reaction to the work, similar or dissimilar than the original poster. Then, again, there's a lot of variety in how you can respond to this. There's some guidelines and there's some direction about how to reply to it, right? Like some like some specific questions. But in the end, what we're really asking for, and we really want you to think about, is the discussion board as a conversation. This is where you and somebody else are talking about something, right? You're sharing those ideas, you're sharing those beliefs, you're doing that back and forth as if you were debating the article live and in person. Obviously, it's asynchronous, it's not, like back and forth, and there's not a lot of expectation that somebody comes back at you, right? Or that it's the original post, right? It could be somebody else. But the idea is that you provide enough information that we see what you're thinking and that somebody else has something to reply to you with. Okay. Um, some things to think about when it comes to your discussion board. Okay. Your first post should stand on its own. Your initial post should be fully developed. It should be well rounded. It should explain your take and your position and what you believe and what you're thinking. It should be a complete piece. Theoretically, if nobody else commented on it and you added nothing else to it, I would still know what you had to say. All right. And then you're going to go in and you're going to respond to at least two other people. Okay. And again, you're going to take what they say and you're going to react and build and expand upon that so that it continues the conversation. Some notes on the discussion board. Okay. Be thoughtful, be critical, but be respectful. Okay. This isn't a place like, well, that's dumb. And let me tell you why, right? Like, that's not what we want. We don't want name calling. We don't want people attacking each other. That's really not the purpose of this. The purpose is not to debate the issue, right? It's just to give our takes and our feedback on. We're not looking to have an argument or discussion or some sort of open forum like that, right? The idea is that you are, they say, I say, and that's what we're doing. That's what we really focus on. Now, obviously, the better, more developed, fleshed out, and fuller your posts are, the better they score. You do need to respond on multiple days to get the maximum points if possible. You do have to be on there multiple times. So you can't go on Sunday afternoon, put your initial post, two replies, and think you're done because you will not get your full points for that. Likewise, the minimum is 2, the expectation is 2, but to get the full points, you're talking to more than those 2 people, right? So again, think about how the discussion board works. Make sure you understand how it's scored and be looking for how you can really build those points in. We do have some information about the slideshow. I'm sorry, we have a slideshow about the introduction and how about to write introductions, including, like when you do the introduction, evoke the reader's interest, get their attention, right? Like you got to draw them in. You got to make sure that they want to read this. Um, Now we're talking a class paper. Theoretically, they're like I have to read every word you have to say, right? But in the real world, that's not the way it works. If you think about Netflix, how many times have you gone on, you've watched 30 seconds, a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and you're like, nope, done. Click, go to the next thing, right? That's how we work. The audience's attention is very narrow, and so you have to make sure that you've engaged them right off the bat. And that means that you've given them a personal connection, you've given them a reason to buy into it, you hit their emotions, whatever it might be. You really get them interested and excited and wanting to read this. Describe that topic and introduce that thesis statement. Talked a little bit about that before, right? But that's kind of that process that you're going to go through. And this slideshow has some information on that. And then finally, at the end, we have the submission of the half draft. This information is all the same as before. What is new on this one is the rubric down here, and this is how your half draft will be scored, right? That it's the right length, it has an introduction, it has a summary. The assumption is that if you did half of it, you're just going to get to the summary. You haven't got to the reaction yet, right? But like I said, the more you give me, the more feedback you're going to be able to get. Evidence and citations, that while you're retelling those main points, you're pointing to the text, you're pulling out examples to show us that text or those ideas or those main points, and that this is in either MLA or APA style. Again, I don't care which one you use as long as you only use one of them. You just stick to it. And then this is worth 50 points. Okay. So, as I kind of get you set up and ready to jump into this paper, into this module, I have to impress upon you, if you have questions, you get stuck, you need help, you need directions, whatever you might need, please make sure you're reaching out. Do not suffer in silence. If there's something that you need, please let me know. The email is the best way to get a hold of me because I can just respond to it whenever. Second best is the text. It's not quick, but it is better than a phone call, which is going to go to voicemail most likely, and it's going to take me a while to respond back. Again, I do want to remind you that if you, in any mode, email, text, voice, whatever it might be, if you contact me, please make sure to include your name, what class this is, and specifically what it is you're needing, right? Um, as a practical matter, if you say, I need help, and then I respond back to you, okay, sure, what do you need? And then you reply back what you need, and then I give you the answer. We're talking a couple days now, right? We could be talking 48 hours, possibly even more. And so the more information you give me to start with, the quicker that I can give you some response. But please don't suffer in silence. If you need something, please reach out. Um, you are welcome to work ahead. I know people like to do that. You are welcome to do that. I would make sure that you don't get too far ahead, or that you understand what those expectations are as you go along. Hey, everybody, welcome to Module 2, and good luck.